It's always quite interesting that early settlers, when they first landed in Australia, it was amazing how we used Aboriginal people to be our knowledge and our scientists earlier on, to take us all through the country, learn about the country and get a greater understanding of the landscape. But it seems now that Aboriginal people have been forgotten and our knowledge is no longer scientific knowledge. In the Lachlan catchment, one of the big issues we have here is lack of access to country. A lot of knowledge has been lost. The big thing for myself is to look at building capacity of Aboriginal communities. So hopefully through programs like this we can actually bring some of that knowledge back in and educate our younger generation so we have some of this knowledge to go forward in the future.
Australia appears to have evolved over a very, very long time with fire. Long before Europeans came to Australia, fire was present. But it was present on a scale where it's almost difficult to record because they were very cool, small burns, not the high intensity burns that we see now and that we fear. These were small scale burns that were done on a day-to-day basis at the right time of year so that they didn't get away from people. These fires caused plants to interact with them and animals to interact with them on a different scale to what we see now. We see benefits from those small fires in the way evolution went. So some grasses do best with these fires. They produce more seed. If they're not burnt, they don't produce seed. And over a long time, some of these grasses even disappear if they don't have seed. If there's no seed, the birds that eat the seed or the animals that eat the seed also disappear because they have no food. These are the processes that appear to have been lost in recent history in Australia. And that's one of the reasons why we started the project.
Yeah, basically they've got a fur on them as well.
Okay.
So the seed had to be burnt off prior to being grinded as well. So
okay.
And then basically when all the seeds were actually brought out of the pod, that would actually be enclosed and had to get heat on it to actually open it up.
To make it open.
Yeah, and once it opened up as well, you just get all the seed out, burn all the hairs that were on the seed pods, and then basically grind it up into sort of bread. You can see sort of some small shrubs.
A few years ago, Russell Hill and I were sitting by a campfire discussing how the knowledge in managing habitat and the environment around this area had disappeared. I had been in the Territory and worked a little up there with traditional burning. And Russell and I decided that we could bring some science and some cultural awareness together in a new project. And that's how the traditional burning project came about.
You'll see all these fruits here that have come out. When they actually come out, they get like a light green sort of colour. You pull them off. A lot of Aboriginal people refer to them as snotty gobble.
We wanted some science to back up management strategies for the future. How does fire influence biodiversity and grasses and all of those things together? But we had a really important component to bring awareness back into the communities so that they had the ability to culturally manage the environment.
Culturally and traditionally, fire was a very sacred thing for Aboriginal people. Traditionally, burning was part of the healing process as well for the land. You know, it cleared rubbish, it brought back the native plants, encouraged wildlife growth and things like that, so yeah.
Well, it's very good to get back to your culture and you sort of come back in contact with the earth, and it does surprise you what you find when you're monitoring what's out there that you never really realised was there before. And overall I think it's a great thing, you know what I mean? To get back to the basics, where we come from.
With the traditional burning program, I guess that's what we're trying to do, is to bring that caring back for our country and our connection to the land. Knowing when to burn, when not to burn.
What you're doing here is going to be wonderful in that we'll long last sort out on the tablelands area at least. Is fire beneficial for flora and fauna? I believe it is. And if people get given the information and it can be proven what's been done, a lot of them will take it on. A lot of farmers and people that own land are not there just to ruin the land. They are there, they realise if they don't look after it, it won't look after them, they will go broke.
Because I have a particular interest in sustainability and also, a concept that Aboriginal practices and knowledge could inform sustainability, given, that connection with the landscape, that's a part of us, it's who we are. For thousands of years we were able to manage the landscape sustainably, thus surviving and being, happy and prosperous in our, with our values and our relationships to our neighbours and things like that, not needing to go and conquer because we were sustainable in our environment. So I think that there's some principles philosophically, but also in practice around how Aboriginal knowledge can support sustainability.
I guess there's an opportunity to learn something new when it comes to, from the Aboriginal perspective of managing flora and fauna that maybe we've never come across before.
See, that culture is lost to the Aboriginal, the burning off and that, and they're sort of bringing it back to the younger generation. I think it's fantastic. And even the station owners, they benefit by it, won't they? It's good for the community. But it'll take time, won't it?
I'm interested in all the good grasses, good perennial grasses, not just spear grass and wire grass. You want the ones that are long-living grasses that are reasonable good quality. So that's what I'm after, and the burning is part of it.
Difficulties we've faced, I guess, mostly drought. In lots of ways it's been difficult for us, but in other ways it's actually been a good thing for recruitment of native grasses. So I guess one of the questions that I'd like to be looking at with this traditional burning is how a long and extended dry period compares as far as recruitment goes with the recruitment after the burning process. So it'd be interesting to see what the comparisons showed there.
I'm not sure why the traditional burning hasn't taken off before. It's one of those skills that has probably been lost to us. I know the Rural Fire Service has sent some people up to Cape York last year to learn more about the traditional burning and the Aboriginal ways of doing things so that we can be more culturally aware. We're trying to do more hazard reduction burning ourselves to protect communities and across a broader landscape. So it fits into what we want to try and do and to expand our knowledge.
The boundary really clearly makes a demarcation between... Very interested in fire, interested in Aboriginal culture, history, people, particularly interested in native foods, and I've started to do a species list. And I think it'd be nice to think about ways to encourage that type of thing, that type of growth, as well as for the sheep that I'll put on here eventually.
So I've been on places out there where there's been stone erosions.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, we have areas that haven't been really disturbed a great deal, but there's a lot of plants that are still here that have cultural connection to Aboriginal people, and I think we'll be able to utilise a lot of that information and also reconnect the community back to some of that knowledge. So it should be good.
So I think there's a lot of seed on the ground, and I've been told that it only germinates with fire. So it would be really interesting to put a fire through here to see if any more of these germinate.
So this area is one of the trial sites that we'll be burning as part of the workshop that we're having, and there's 10 of these throughout this grassland area, and we're looking at an individual grass species level, what happens when we do the cool burning.
With these traditional burns and things, with other government agencies involved, that's a real good thing for us, because we know that the agencies and other people want to learn our culture. I do hear stories even now
about my older elders, past and present, that used to do that to survive on the land. I think what's actually happening, and I'm really proud to say this, is that the white community are foreseeing now what we had way back hundreds of years ago, and are trying to probably reconnect with the cultural side and the local communities, Aboriginal communities that is, with tradition. And I'm proud for anybody that really wants to learn and know that. I do and will try and help anybody out that's got a question or wants to try something, or in theory, will it work or won't it work? Okay, and even the younger ones that come out to these events, right, you can see when they turn up, why am I here? I don't really want to be, I'd sooner be home watching telly. And then after an hour or a few hours, you can see the change in them, because they can go out and play, they can climb a hill. They're sitting around talking to some of the people that have been on the land here, experienced different things, and that they're sort of learning. In a sense, you don't think they are, but when they're ready to go, you can see, geez, we've got to go. We've had so much fun in the last day or the last hour or whatever the case might be in the situation. They can say, well, I've been involved in all that.
I'm on the steering committee for this project, and one of the key things Russell spoke to me early on about was that thing about having the scientific knowledge help support Aboriginal people in reinvigorating their own cultural practices. If a fire started, there's a lot of opportunities for resources as the fire moves its way through the landscape. Particular birds coming into burn areas, well, that allows communities to catch some of those birds. There's other things, kangaroos come in for the new growth and things like that. Our mobs were very, very smart at their ecological knowledge, and I think now a lot of the knowledge and stories that our mobs have, previously regarded as myths and stories, I think now they're understanding that they're actually based in knowledge of ecologies, and the stories were there so that they could teach their kids, and their kids could teach their kids and pass that knowledge on, because we couldn't go and watch a DVD or read a textbook, because the textbook's out here. There's a lot of talk about water and things like that, but fire on the landscape's just as important.
These are derived grasslands, really. Pure native grasslands are really, I think we can say, non-existent in the Lachlan catchment. It's an unfortunate thing that's happened over time through a whole range of processes, different grazing pressures, and probably a lack of burning as well. And that's the brilliance of traditional burning, because the small mosaic burns that occurred favoured some grasses, and then where it wasn't burned, other grasses were favoured. So you've got that really complex mix of different species existing, all very close to each other, but under different fire regimes.
So here today, we've been able to stand back and actually watch fire, and not use fire as a tool for hazard reduction, but more so use it as a tool for encouraging the regeneration of native vegetation, which is really good to see. I think what we're really doing is harnessing the essence of what cultural burning is about, which is about living in a landscape, adapting to that landscape, having connections and values with that landscape that are holistic. We can still use that philosophy in that way and go, we have people living here, we have agricultural land here, we have land that we want to manage for biodiversity and cultural values. How do we then use those principles and put them into that landscape in a way that sort of means that each of those stakeholders and communities and people can get something out of that landscape that they relate to and can put something back into it? That philosophy is sort of, to me, what's most important when I guess we start talking about where would you start burning, and it's about what's important to you, what do you want to focus on. For a lot of people it's risk, but I'd say culturally it's about looking at our cultural values, so sites, plants, animals. What are the animals that we want to see in the landscape that aren't there? Why aren't they there? What are the animals we want to see healthy in that landscape? They're there now but they're not healthy. Same with bush tucker and fruits and
start thinking about what are the values of that landscape that are important to us, and then start, you know, biting off little bits that we can sort of chew around how you'd go about changing the way that that fire regime or natural system is working. So it's about that kinship structure in the landscape, you know, which is a cultural construct, it's a social construct, and it's also a natural construct, and that's that relationship that links Aboriginal people to the land, is that responsibility to each other and the landscape. That idea that, oh, you know, we don't have the knowledge, or we haven't been burning for a long time. Burning's about practice. That's where, you know, the implementation comes from. But the knowledge is in the land, and it's in here. You know, if you understand to communicate and start, you know, talking to country, it tells you what it wants. It tells you what it needs. You know, scientists and stuff, they understand a lot of that science. You know, and you put the community, the culture into it, and you start bringing these things together. You can start burning in a way that actually improves that landscape and actually feeds into that practice.
What's your name?
My name is Teresa.
Teresa Griffiths.
Griffiths?
And my name is Ian Harris from Murray Bridge. Yeah, it was pretty sort of eye-opening because this is my first one, and sort of never sort of been a part of this sort of culture as I grew up in my little Aboriginal community, and this is the first one we sort of seen and to be a part of, and yeah, it's quite interesting, and I'm pretty sort of grateful to see it. And hope to see some more and get more involved with it, and learn more of the practices what sort of goes into doing this sort of stuff.
The interaction between plants and fire goes over a very long scale of time. We wouldn't expect to see huge changes in just 12 months or just in one fire. The changes we expect are going to be over a much longer term. I hope that this project is able to show benefits for not just the biodiversity that's around us, but it will also give people confidence that fire isn't always such a bad thing. If fire is used as a management tool in a smaller way, we should be able to set up a landscape that isn't exposed to these much larger dangerous fires that have currently started to ravage the landscape.
As an Aboriginal person, it's a natural feeling when you do a burn or you do something cultural. And though we haven't been practicing traditional culture, but it's still instilled inside of us. We can sense that this is the right thing that we're doing. My mission is, or my vision is, that it would filter out right throughout the state, and we start these traditional burns and just educate landholders and Australia as a whole as to the benefits of Aboriginal land management, because to be quite honest, Aboriginal people were the best land managers since, you know, almost since time began. But